Wow. Scrollies listeners, it's finally happened. I've been sitting on it for an entire year. Squat Cobbler, at the start of Scrollies, gave me a little coupon that said, redeem for one Final Fantasy episode. And there's a little asterisk next to it that says, and it won't be a bonus episode. I'm flying high, guys. I don't know what to say. I am Team Sqadnado. I am a host, one of two hosts of this podcast. You already know the topic. You know I'm happy. You can probably hear it in my voice. I'm smiling. It's incredible. We got great guests. But I'm here with my co-host, kind of the, I would say maybe the Barrett to my Cloud Strife. My co-host...
Sqadnado's riding high right now. This has been his fantasy for as long as Scrollies has been a thing, probably even longer. When he first suggested doing a podcast, it was probably just a Final Fantasy podcast, and then he got stuck with me. So, nonetheless, I hope he didn't read that fine print that I said one Final Fantasy episode per numbered game. But I guess he didn't look over it well enough. So we'll just let that fall by the wayside. I'm Squat Cobbler. I don't have much to say this time around, but I'm here, and this is going to be a good episode, I can already tell. A historic one, Rat, for a number of reasons.
Yeah, here's the thing, Squat. When we do a Donkey Kong episode or something, I come up with bits. It's your turn, man.
I'm finally seeing what it's like on the other side, and it's a little scary, but I'm excited. I'm ready.
Oh, man. Let's keep it going. We've also got in the party... I guess he's not red. Maybe he's blue.
Blue number 9.
Blue 13.
The Blue Bomber.
Yeah.
Mega Man bursts in. Mega Man has joined the party.
Welcome, UltraJohnic.
He's back, Ultra. Welcome back to Scrollies.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I always enjoy talking with you guys, so it is great to be here. Thank you guys so much for asking me, Dad.
And if I can see, I don't think Ultra's alone, Sqadnado. Look who else.
No way! Oh my gosh! FoxyEvey, what's up? Welcome to Scrollies.
Glad to be here, you guys. It's FoxyEvey here, one of the mods at UltraJohnic's channel.
There we go.
And one of the Choo Choo Boys on Final Fantasy XIV with us.
That's right.
Choo Choo Boys!
Worlds colliding. Choo Choo Boys, again, putting it out there. You don't have to be a boy. Famously, Vivian.
Not a boy.
Still a Choo Choo Boy. You can be part of the Choo Choo Boys.
We always just go by the Kel Mitchell rule that he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes.
Oh, yes. We are all dudes. And on this day, we are all talking Final Fantasy VII. You guys, I love this game. And the reason we're talking about this whole thing, is coming up next week. Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, Reunion, Remake, Remaster, Redo, Re-up. I don't know. They're redoing Crisis Core, which is a fine game. We specifically invited UltraJohnic and Evie here because they are also... enjoyers of Final Fantasy VII, would you say?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. So I always had this stupid thing in my head when I was a kid because, you come up with all these different things to make yourself super cool. And Final Fantasy was always in my Triforce of gaming. There was Zelda, Mega Man, and Final Fantasy. And those are my Triforce of gaming.
Okay. I mean, I love the melding of Final Fantasy and Zelda. The Triforce... It's amazing. I'm forcing Squat to do this. Smile, Squat, like I told you to.
I'm thrilled to be here. Yeah, let's talk about Final Fantasy VII.
Final Fantasy VII truly is the compilation of it. It is almost 30 years old. Like, it's getting there.
I guess it would be 25 years if it was 97, yes?
I guess it is. For some reason, I thought it was like 27 years at this point.
A lot of sevens. Too many sevens.
Lucky sevens.
And so, I don't know, just to kind of introduce you to this, and, I want to know, let's start with Evie. What is kind of your first interaction with Final Fantasy VII?
Although I'm old enough to have played it when it first came out, I really didn't interact with it at all until... maybe like 3 or 4 years after that, when I was in middle school, so like the early 2000s. I went over to a friend's house, and he actually had Final Fantasy VII on the PC. So my first exposure to like Final Fantasy VII, and he also had Final Fantasy VIII.
Oh my gosh.
Was the PC version of those games.
So the first time you heard the music, it was like the MIDI version?
Yeah.
Nice. Good old middies.
Squat for context there. He doesn't know cool Final Fantasy VII stuff like us. The Final Fantasy VII PC release could have been like synced up with a specific MIDI board, and it sounds incredible. Go look up the remaster on YouTube that it plays with the actual soundboard. But if you didn't have that specific Sony piece of hardware, it was this terrible MIDI version.
You could say you were listening to Final Fantasy VII soundtrack as Nobuo Uematsu intended. Cut to watching, cut to listening to it on an Apple Watch or something.
Yeah, exactly.
That Christopher Nolan meme.
So tinny. Nobody in that time had that thing, so I think everybody that was their first experience. Ultra Guy, what about you?
So my first experience, specifically with Final Fantasy VII, is I had just played 6 in my own time, and I went over to a family friend's house, and he was on the ice mountain, so pretty far in, like into the beginning of the second disc, and I'm just watching these polygons run around, and I'm like, and what game is this? Final Fantasy VII. I've played Final Fantasy. Oh my gosh.
But I just played Final Fantasy III. Where's the other 4?
Yeah, what happened to the other ones? Oh yeah, I forgot it was Final Fantasy III.
If you listen to the last Ultra Guy episode, you know about that, how Ultra Guy definitely was the part of a joke of why we rated him. And
the localization, the North American localization of Final Fantasy titles is solely the only reason why we know UltraJohnic.
And thank Gaia for that. Squawk Cobbler, what about you?
Sqadnado, I've had no exposure. I haven't played any of the games. I've never consumed any of the Final I mean, I know who Cloud is. He's the blonde one. And Zack is the black-haired one? But they both use the Buster Sword. Why don't they just... Why do they share? Why can't one of them just... One of them gets a different weapon? I don't... So, yeah, I unfortunately don't have anything to... Oh, wait. Actually, there is something. Yes, there was a trailer I can talk about. You see, there was a time where I was a big Godzilla fan, and I would watch all of the DVDs, the North American release DVDs of the Showa and Millennium films, and this came out like somewhere like early 2000s. I think each year they'd release a new set of DVDs, but Godzilla fans are not always the easiest to pin down marketing wise. So the trailers on the DVD was kind of just a collection of all kinds of stuff. I mean, like, you know, they're into Japanese culture, so like maybe anime, but not always. You know, they're like monster movies, so we'll put like some horror on there, maybe like a little bit of campiness, and maybe like a horror comedy. And let's like, throw some stuff in there for video games. Like, why not? So I was exposed to this trailer that at the time I didn't realize was even relating to a video game. I just remember this dramatic CG cutscene, or I guess just this dramatic CGI trailer with this very serious voiceover.
The planet weaves a cruel fate for men. Children are always the first to suffer.
It was Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, the trailer for it. That's
Oh my goodness.
That's the first exposure to Final Fantasy VII I ever saw. That's when I saw Cloud. That's when I saw the Buster Sword for the first time, and I said, oh, "Okay, that's cool. Let me skip ahead to my kaiju. I don't care about any of this stuff." Little did I know, decades later, I would be on this podcast dedicated to Final Fantasy VII. So that's what I got.
And he hasn't thought about it since.
So that's all you know about Final Fantasy VII?
Well, much like Shrax has absorbed Metal Gear trivia through osmosis, much as I myself have absorbed Kingdom Hearts trivia from osmosis. I as well know Final Fantasy VII things just from knowing people such as yourselves. But yes, for as far as what I have partaken in my in my own leisure, yes, that's about as far as it goes.
And that's kind of like almost a little bit what I'm talking about today, is that I feel like there are so many epochs of this. There is like kind of like me, the old school gamer who has loved Final Fantasy VII since it came out on PlayStation. Maybe Evie and UltraJohnic are the same. We have the people who saw its like, I don't know, teenage years in the early 2000s where it was like, yeah, we like alternative rock and we're cool guys. And now it's kind of come full circle to like remake people who are just like, everyone. It's like kind of just this big thing that everyone can take part in. Overall, for me, Final Fantasy VII, the reason I like it so much is because despite Final Fantasy VI being my favorite, it really did like bring in everybody. I don't know, Evie, if you and UltraJohnic like remember that time, like the 1997s, 1998, when that game came out and it was like huge.
Oh yeah.
I was just going to echo the sentiment that of how big it was. It was pretty massive. They had commercials running all the time. It was a huge seller. I think it was still one of the huge sellers. Didn't it still beat out 8?
Oh yeah, it was so huge. Even like Taco Bell did a little thing where they had like a cup you could get with Cloud and Aerith on it. Can you see them doing that today? Probably not, but they should.
Specifically on that, me and my dad took a business trip when I was like just before that game came out. So I was like, I don't know, but like I remember there was a billboard for Final Fantasy VII outside of the office that we were working at. I was like sitting on one of the computers playing some game, Solitaire or something, as my dad was working in the other room. And then I just saw out the window this billboard for Final Fantasy VII just plastered there. And it's so crazy because I've never seen any other Final Fantasy that was like that marketing-wise.
That's what got so many people into it. And I think the fact that it wasn't like, hey, look, we've got... they weren't straightforward with here's chocobos and the gold saucer. They were like, no, this is like a gritty sci-fi story, I think is how they market it. You know what I'm saying though?
Oh yeah, they would always show the action shots, of Cloud riding on the train or him riding on the motorcycle. They didn't show any of the more anime type things. It's like, we must be as American as we can. Machismo.
The close-up on Keiichi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've even seen, not at the time, obviously, but I think just on YouTube, I've even seen a trailer of the game that's highlighting its story. It's saying, oh, the best story isn't in theaters this year. The best story is on PlayStation. Final Fantasy VII, and it's just like this tracking shot over the world of Midgar. And, I mean, the story was front and center, wasn't it? It was at least in the North American marketing, it was the selling point of the game.
Yes, so such a 90s commercial for it of like a love that could never be, an evil that always was. It's like,
yeah, complete with the movie voice guy even.
Kind of a misrepresentation. Squad, kind of like, what is your perception of Final Fantasy VII? Like, I guess as somebody who doesn't consume Final Fantasy like I do, I assume Evie and UltraJohnic, that, you seem to all like Final Fantasy about as much as I do.
I think my thoughts on it can be summarized in this interaction I've had, and I think I've mentioned this on Scrollies before. Back when the Smash DLC was still coming out, there was several fighters in the first pack, I believe. I was talking with Payday. And he had been playing a lot of Final Fantasy VII Remake at the time. And, Cloud was already in the game, obviously. He had been in since Smash 4. And he was like, hey, do you think they'll ever add, the villain in this, Sephiroth? You think they'll ever add him to Smash? And I said, I mean, probably not, right? If they were going to add another Final Fantasy character, they just go with a different game than number 7, right? And it's a good thing I didn't bet money on that, because a year later, and sure enough. So if I had to describe Final Fantasy VII in a word, I'd say it's the famous one. It's kind of the one that's indicative of the entire franchise. People think of the characters from 7, the world of 7. They think of the Buster Sword. They don't think of any of the other games.
Yeah, remember when Sephiroth came out to Smash Bros? There was a whole freaking event for it. there was like a little mini game thing where you had to defeat Sephiroth, and it was like, oh yeah, you have to do it in different difficulty modes, and it was like intense.
Yeah, didn't he even like a little like perspective trickery? But didn't he even kill Mario like straight up in the Smash reveal? The most brutal fatality they'd ever like give their iconic mascot in a character reveal.
Oh, that was really good. I love to go look at the reactions for that because everyone is like, "Oh my gosh!" Oh, you know. As we kind of discussed, Evey and UltraJohnic, and I mean, Squad, I kind of understand. To me, it's crazy that people, obviously, to me, everything Final Fantasy is an event, and I'm like, yeah, everybody loves this. What are the things that you enjoy about Final Fantasy VII?
So something I've always really enjoyed about Final Fantasy VII is the characters that you meet through the game. They really flesh them out. So with 6, they had like that big ensemble cast, which was great. But then they really like brought it back down, and they had a fairly limited amount of party members. And so you really got to focus on those specific characters. And I loved the backstories for like even side characters like Vincent and Yuffie. They had like entire areas that you could go to and learn more about them if you liked them.
And you didn't even need to have them at all.
Yeah.
You could have gone the whole game without ever figuring out who Yuffie is.
Yeah, you could miss them entirely. Like the Vincent's just in like a side room in the basement. You can just like walk right past it and just be like, do.
And you'd miss out on so much. Evey, what about you?
I guess one thing that I would say, it probably sound kind of crazy to somebody like Squat that's really only sees it from the outside, but kind of how almost simple the game is. It keeps the story is, everybody always says, it's very convoluted and stuff like that, but like when you're actually playing the game and going through it, it's not really that complicated. It keeps you involved and just wanting to keep going through the game. It just keeps you engaged. The game itself is nice and simple with the materia system, the active time battle. It feels a lot very actiony with its graphics, a lot more than the going back before to just the sprites to the fully realized 3D graphics, where the characters run across the stage, lots of particle effects and explosions to make you keep looking at the game. And like UltraJohnic was saying, with the characters, you put your reading and going through the story, and it's just pulls you into the game and keeps you involved, engaged, and you just don't want to put it down.
What you were saying about the materia system, I think that's like one of the best ways that they simplified it. Like, going on what you're saying, it's so much like simpler because all of the characters are just like almost blank slates, and then you get to equip your different materias on them. And so it makes it like a super simple system that makes it easy to keep moving forward, but it still gives you that drive to, I need to level up this materia, because it's like, I could get Cure 2, but I have to put X amount of points into it. So it's still got that drive to move forward like an RPG, but it's just a simplified version of it.
Even though it is like simple, there is still something underneath. Like if you wanted to look into all the materia stats, you can totally min-max your games, because every materia gives you a plus and a minus, and you can totally customize your characters that way as well.
Yeah. And such a smart move to move away from, like, in Final Fantasy VI, which is a lot more crunchy with, like, espers and stuff like that and character growth. They're just like, everything's just on the thing, so now you don't have to be like, am I going to miss out if I put this esper on somebody? It's like, no, just get the materia and then create the characters you want, which I think probably helped a lot of people who just, like, got into the game and were probably not, like, RPG players before. It's really simplified it, but like you're saying, the combos that you could do with materia, and I would say even the materia system is huge for Final Fantasy, and it's like stuff that the rest of the games kind of like try and innovate on. Specifically in 7, though, like as we're talking about, like, you know, in gearing up for Crisis Core and stuff, that system just goes on and becomes simplified. And I've given this praise to Kingdom Hearts as well, but I will say I think that Crisis Core is the model for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it's just so fun to just take a few pieces of materia and say, okay, how can I bulk this up? And when you create like a nice little combo, it's like, now Cloud can't get poison damage and he's doing fire damage, and that's perfect for this fight, and it's so satisfying. I was going to ask if any of you have played a Crisis Core.
I have played through Crisis Core once, and I can definitely see what you're saying with, like, it's sort of like a proto Final Fantasy VII Remake. I haven't played a lot of 7 Remake, but the things that I did play, I could see like Crisis Core in it. And it was the story for that one gets a little complex and convoluted in places, but
that's a compilation of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, it gives it its own identity, though, still. And there's still a lot of really cool ideas about it. I love the character, the big brother guy, who gives you the sword.
Angeal,
yeah. I really like that character and his relationship with Zack throughout the game. And then even Cloud and Zack's relationship, how it fleshes out that, is really cool. So there's a lot of really cool ideas in Crisis Core. And they definitely do, like, simplify the materia system even further, like you're saying. It's just like stat boosts, basically. And then the summons were like this weird, like casino roulette thing that was going on. And it was a little all over the place, but it was still neat.
Crisis Core, and I think everything about the compilation, I don't know if anyone out there has played more of the compilation, but everything is kind of just like an echo of 7, and it really feels like Star Wars in the sense that they're like, well, let's just go back to that idea. Let's retry that. Like, you're not to spoil too much about Crisis Core, but it is kind of a mini Final Fantasy VII in and of itself. And I don't know. I don't know. I just love this game so much. And in general, Final Fantasy, and I don't know if anybody loves Final Fantasy as much as I. Is that what I'm figuring out?
It'd be, once you meet your match, I don't know if you two would even like each other, given how much you'd both be fanatical about this series. I guess what I'd have to ask is, what is it about 7? What is it about the world? What is it about the characters that you think has them continue to go back to it? Whereas for, I mean, maybe you can correct me otherwise, but I feel like for the majority of other numbered entries, they're just kind of left, you know, maybe they'll do like a remake of the original game, but they don't continue to revisit this world, right?
I think that's really true. Would you let me say this, and then Evie and Ultra, you can tell me how you feel about this. But I feel like a lot of other Final Fantasy games definitely have like their stands, and I think a lot of people even like other games more than 7. But I think what 7 does so well, and why it's so huge, I think it touches normies. I think normies kind of get it, if that makes sense.
The accessibility is there.
Excellent phrasing. Excellent.
like the sense of like, well, people look at Cloud and they're like, oh, it's like this dude and he's on a motorcycle and he looks cool and he's got this big sword. Like, I think that's easier for a lot of people than being like Final Fantasy IX. Who is this monkey guy with like Renaissance clothing?
Wait, there's a monkey in 9? Oh, I gotta check that one out.
Yeah, man.
Monkey.
That is one of Evie's outfits in Final Fantasy XIV is what's his name?
Zidane.
Zidane, yeah, Zidane in Final Fantasy IX, and I think that's what it is that like Final Fantasy VII. I know, thoroughly kind of tongue in cheek in this, Final Fantasy VII is kind of cool.
I have no doubt that the sales of hair gel increased tenfold in the late 90s, early 2000s, perhaps indirectly because of Final Fantasy VII.
I've got to say that I think Rat or Mr. NATO, if I may.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. NATO was his father.
I've never been so honored.
Yeah, that Rat really did touch that. It did appeal more to the normies, like even more than like even 8, when they specifically tried even harder to appeal to normies by going for a more realistic art style, but it didn't really work out as much for them. Then going back to 9 to an extreme chibi, which didn't work out even more. Then it kind of picked up again with 10, but it still kept on with the more anime aesthetic. But with 7, it still had a little bit of the anime in it, but the game itself didn't feel anime as much as later entries and even previous entries sometimes felt. It kept it really grounded, and all the terminology inside the game wasn't really that out there, like with Final Fantasy 13, for instance. You know, it was just the planet, the ancients. It was Mako. It was all just kind of really more simple terms that you could kind of explain once, and you just, oh, it's like this, oh, it's like that, oh. And then you can just go ahead and enjoy your game, rather than being like, oh, this is some weird Asian thing, okay.
You don't have to decipher it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get just your regular person talking about the lassie over a bowl of mac and cheese, right? Let's talk about the Fabula Nova Crystallis. But yeah, like you're saying, I think it's just because it was set in like a real world, and maybe that's kind of like what Final Fantasy 15 was trying to do, of just being like, hey, do you know what cell phones are? So do these characters.
Do you know what cup noodle is? So do these characters.
Squad Cobbler.
What?
There is a straight in Final.
It exists in Final Fantasy. It's canon.
Rat, screenshot my face right now. We need to put that as the cover art.
So they made a DLC for Final Fantasy 15 that is an advertisement for cup noodle. I don't know what you do in it.
What?
But it's legit in the game.
We're talking about like microwavable ramen, right?
Yeah.
Incredible. Wow.
Yeah, there's this part where you're like, your entire country falls, and then one of your friends is like, hey, let's go hunt a huge lobster so that we can make our own cup of noodles. And you're like, sure.
Perhaps we truly can't improve upon perfection.
It's not about finding the single best ingredient. It's about crafting that perfect blend of meat, egg, and shrimp. That harmony of flavors is key.
Yeah, you're right. Makes you appreciate how delicious these noodles really are.
I know I sure do.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
It's such in the Square Enix way of like almost sincere, but like they kind of know that they're being silly, but also you know they're like, oh no, this is cool.
Only when Tetsuya writes it, right?
Yeah, man.
Nomura!
I do think that is why, and I will say this because I know that War Staff always says like, oh, Rat, you were a jock. I think I was a nerd, even though I did all these things, and maybe that's to me what Final Fantasy VII is. It's like, yeah, I play basketball, I'm on the football team, but hey, I like comics and I like anime too. And I feel like that's the crossover, and it's almost like a Dragon Ball Z feeling, if you feel me, of just like, hey, cool people like Dragon Ball Z. Even though if you sat down and watched it, it's very nerdy.
Certainly.
Is there anything else that you guys wanted to discuss about this? Because we're at about time, and I could go forever. Maybe I'll leave this part in.
Yeah, no, I'd keep going too. So this is fun.
I'd like to talk about the music, because I feel like Final Fantasy VII's music was just such a big jump in quality. Like, it's the first thing that it's just like, you were able to have the CD system. Like, he only took advantage of it for a couple of tracks, like, famously, like, the One-Winged Angel and stuff, you know, where it was just this big bombastic score. I think it was still sampled, right? One-Winged Angel, but it's just, it had so many more, like, sound channels. It was just so crazy. And then, like, everybody loves that track. It's freaking everywhere.
Even I know that track.
Yeah,
It's in the Advent Children trailer.
Yeah, and then there's the DK rap version.
Oh, One-Winged Kong, Coconut Cream Despair. Let's go.
I'm gonna mod Final Fantasy VII with Donkey Kong in it, and that's how I'll get Squat.
That's what it takes. That's all it takes, Ratnado. Give me one winged Kong.
The music is truly good. Like, if you know, you know. There's this part in Cosmo Canyon that I cry. I cry every single time I play it. The music hits, the visuals hit, the story hits, and it's greater than the sum of its parts. And I think that's what Final Fantasy does really well too, is like bittersweet, and like with the music, like you're saying, Ultra Guy, there's so many good songs on it. I've said this before that I like the Jenova theme more than One Winged Angel, just because of how like cool and like synthy and kind of like spacey and sci-fi it is.
Yeah, Jenova has long been one of my favorite boss fight musics. And just the other, like, also what I was going to say about the music is I just really like I know some people really like more, real sounding instruments, and Final Fantasy VII doesn't really have that. Mm-hmm. But I really like the sound font thing that they used in Final Fantasy VII. Like, you hear a piece of music from it like outside of it, and you're like, that's the Final Fantasy VII sound, that's the Final Fantasy VII music. And I've even tried like on some of my playthroughs modding in like mods that people have made to make the song sound more realistic, and it never hits the same as the actual original sounding music. Like, I've done it with like even like Final Fantasy IX, I had some modded music in that, and it sounded fine. But with 7, no, I need to have the original, unless it's playing the remake, which I really like the soundtrack to that as well.
Squat, literally, that's exactly what I was saying to Squat on our Composer episode. But that's how I feel. I feel like what I like about the 7 and what I feel remake is missing is like I feel like it's like a cyberpunk kind of story, especially starting out in Midgar, and so that like MIDI sound, that like kind of like ultra synthetic sound is part of it.
It's kind of missing that gritty feel that the original 7 has, like especially going like comparing Wall Market, the Wall Market themes. Like in the original 7, it's like this, this gritty, back alley kind of thing. But in the remake, it's like a Las Vegas party all the time, which is fine. It's a very fine piece of music, but it's very different than the feel that Wall Market is supposed to be going for.
Evie, our brains are connected right now. That's exactly how I feel. I've never heard anyone else like express it in different words, but I know what you like, the exact same meaning.
You've met your match, Rat.
And I think Squat, like, part of it too is that I think it is like not the like I feel like remake is the Nintendo-fied version of it, of Final Fantasy VII. Did you guys feel that like Final Fantasy VII was like grungy and kind of dirty? Like, you went to these places and it was dealing like these real world things, like not that they're good, but like drugs and trafficking and
this guy are sick.
This guy.
It's definitely a more corporate feel rather than just like a single person's vision. It was definitely more. It felt like it was a more designed by committee kind of thing, where they're like, oh, we can't include this in here, even though it's kind of more like the original, but we need to clean this up a little bit, and so it doesn't have the dirtiness that it may have had.
As we're talking about this, I'm interested to see like what Crisis Core Reunion does, because I think that Final Fantasy VII Remake does a lot of those types of things of like, no spoilies here, but they take out some of the stuff that Tifa says in Remake that very much affects her personality. Basically, her first interaction with Cloud, and like, hey, the promise. They completely changed that, and that changed the whole context for so much of the story.
As long as they include me, Gongaga.
Me? Gongaga.
Me, Gongaga. You can see Squat's eyes glazing over.
Resident squatter right here.
We could talk about Final Fantasy all day. They call them Final Fantasy, but they keep going and going and going and going, and I am here for it.
The discussion is never final.
Yeah.
Should we mention anything more about the other compilations, like Dirge or Advent Children?
Let's not.
That's probably for the best.
There will be an Advent Children episode at some point. I think there has to be. There has to be.
Yeah. I would want to. Here's what I want to do for an episode. I want to make Squat watch Advent Children.
With no context. No context. Oh my gosh, I'm so down. Let's do it.
Yes.
Let's do it.
and just have him explain to me. Maybe this is like a Shrek Set quiz kind of thing where I'm just like, all right, Squat, explain Final Fantasy VII to me.
That's amazing. I'm putting that in brainstorming right now. That's an incredible idea.
Oh man, those of you who are listening, I think the last thing I want to say, we'll give everyone their time if they have anything else to add. But I think what I want to say is that like Final Fantasy VII is so important to me, and I think the reason is it just encapsulates the '90s anime aesthetic of kind of like before it became, not in a bad way. I feel like it's very much a different thing now though than it used to be. It used to be very like I felt artistic, mature, even being silly, mature in a silly way. And 7 captured that. I think it did something different that they've just been trying to replicate ever since. In some cases, maybe they aren't trying so hard, but that's always in the back of their mind of like 7 did so well.
I love Final Fantasy. I love Final Fantasy VII. It's good.
Again, a shout out on Final Fantasy XIV. Primal Exodus, we're on there. We've got an FC, we've got a house in Ishgard. 2 of the Choo Choo boys here with me right now. Stuff coming for you on the YouTube at Team Ratnado if you want to check it out. We have a fun time. It's a lot of laughs. You can find out what Pump Dorcas is making for dinner in the clip that's on YouTube right now. Thanks so much for joining us, FoxyEvey and UltraJohnic. I appreciate you being here to talk Final Fantasy with me.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on again. Talking about nostalgia again. I'll just talk about nostalgia all day, every day.
Thank you for having me on for the first time.
UltraEvey, it's a pleasure. What is Scrollies if not just a nostalgia dumping ground for us and for all of our guests? No, I'm glad we could finally wrap this bone. He's been looking forward to having this discussion for as long as Scrollies been a thing. And hey, maybe if there's enough clamor for it, from at least one of you, we'll get more Final Fantasy episodes in here down the road. I say, and we'll come to regret in the near future. Hey, I got a new Discord. Huge. H.U.G.E, aka the humble union of gaming enthusiasts. I'm there with maintainer Dee, Andy, one of Kelpsy's friends, and yeah, it's mostly all monkey all the time. But hey, feel free to hop on in. The link will be in the description. It's also a new home for Scrollies on my end. I put the episodes there each week, and we can talk about them. And hey, show me the light. Tell me what's the hype around these number games, around Final Fantasy in particular. Maybe one of you will break through to me.
All right, thanks so much for listening, everyone. Some stuff coming up at the end of the year. Evie, UltraJohnic, do you guys have anything you want people to know about that you're working on, where they can find you?
So you can find me at UltraJohnic. No, you can find me at twitch.tv/UltraJohnic, where I sometimes stream things. Sometimes.
You can find me at twitch.tv/UltraJohnic, where I sometimes comment. Sometimes.
On camera or in the chat. UltraJohnic Twitch channel is the place to be.
Thanks so much. We'll see you all next week talking about something that I'm not going to spoil the surprise. You'll see. Thanks for listening, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
See you later.
Ba 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 ba. I'm peeking now, sorry.
Oh, I thought that was all building up into a bye, Ultra.